Hi, my name is Kaleli Smith, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys a little bit about my research project, which is on suicide culture and the cultivation theory. Now, before we get into it, I am going to give you guys a little rundown, a little brief introduction about all the things that we're going to be going over. So let's get into it. Throughout the years, communication research has helped researchers analyze the impact of media effects on the public. Communication research reviews the process of media, the content of media, and the message systems while applying them to the public. And one of the well-known communication research theories is the cultivation theory, which was first studied by George Gertner. And in his work, he hypothesized that television contributes to the public's distorted perception of reality. And throughout his work, he puts an emphasis on violence in the media and its impact on the public. Well, similarly, I am going to be doing the same, but taking suicide on television and reviewing its impact on the public. So it's apparent that suicide culture has become an entertaining section of many plots in many TV shows and many movies and many stories. I mean, we see it in Netflix's 13 Reasons Why, in the movie 13, and American Horror Story, and Girl Interrupted, and more. The suicide has become glamorized and normalized for entertainment today. It is vital for researchers to understand to just what extent does suicide on television impact its viewers. So with that being said, let's get into the slideshow. So where does this theory stem from? As I said, it does stem from George Gertner, the founder of the Cultural Indicators Project in 1964. This is where he first studied the cultivation theory, and there have been plenty of people after that. And essentially, he just wanted to determine the relationship between television and its viewers. That brings us to the question of why do we research this topic? Well, there's an ongoing trend to portray graphic intensities on television, and this is not limited to just suicide. This is self-harm on television. This is rape on television. This is graphic murders on television. Well, since the first appearance of graphic or violent graphics on television, violent crimes in reality have increased. And since the first appearance of suicide on television, suicide rates have increased. Researchers need to examine if there is a relationship between the two, which is why we ask these questions. Which brings us to what is the purpose of the research? So the purpose of this research is to really give researchers more information through analyzing suicide on television. It helps determine the harmful impacts or harmful attitudes, and it also helps determine the relationship between suicide on television compared to the media's normalized attitude of it. I mean, analyzing suicide on self-harm gives researchers insight on the impact that television has on our daily lives. Author Patrick Plaisance of Media Ethics, he says that the media can have harmful impacts on one's mental state or supports harmful attitudes. So the purpose is to really determine the relationship between suicide on television and its viewers. And through reviewing all of this, we align some research questions that help us determine the contribution of suicide on television to reality. So some of my research questions were, how does television impact its viewers? Does viewing suicide and self-harm in the media influence its viewers? To what extent does it impact its viewers? And what are viewers' reactions to these graphic intensities on television? Now, you might ask, how does one analyze the cultivation theory? Well, it really deals with two ingredients, and those ingredients are institutional process analysis, which examines how complex systems operate. So how do our brains operate? And message system analysis, which aims to identify the context of message patterns in television and media. So the catchy phrases we hear, the songs that are opening, things like that. Now, it's also important to note that the cultivation theory is a communication and a sociological framework that posits that long-term exposure to media shapes how consumers of media perceive the world and how they conduct themselves. So it basically studies the social patterns and behaviors of the public. Now, the materials of this research include going through many scholarly works. I investigated many of them trying to find a connection between television and its viewers. I also did investigate those or scholarly works that were opposed to what the cultivation theory is about, just so it wouldn't have this bias weight to it. And I also did investigate the statistics of rising rates of suicide and also the statistics of the rising rates of suicide on television as well. So I would also just like to bring it back to violence for a second. Since it was hypothesized that violence can negatively impact its viewers, it's important to examine these stats, which is why it is imperative to go through many statistics, many articles. Among Americans ages 15 through 34, two of the top three causes of death are homicide and suicide. And see, the cultivation theory says that fictional television creates this impression of this mean world syndrome in which television creates a sense of fear in reality. So television causes more fear. It makes people live in fear. So I investigate the aspect of suicide in this, and I've included this chart here for you guys. And the chart essentially is an analysis of the public's feelings towards suicide in the media. The chart shows the questions asked and the public's answers about their feelings on how they think that the media reports on suicide. So we see here from the percentages that it is evident that media does not portray the harms of suicide that they put on media. Less than 20% of the public say that TV news stories show the full impact of suicidal behavior. Over 50% of TV shows or TV stories describe in details how the suicide was committed, and over 98% of viewers say that stories do not inform viewers about suicide prevention. So essentially, the media is displaying these graphic intensities, these triggers, and they do not give any outlets for the viewers to look to if they are a possible trigger for them. In my research, I also did look over suicide on television and its impact on children and teens. So obviously, children are very susceptible to what they view, causing a domino effect of negative impacts of suicide on television. And the exposure of adolescents to media has significantly increased. I mean, we all know the saying of an iPad kid or an iPad baby. I mean, children learn about suicide from television, and they do discuss with other children. However, they do not discuss with adults. The people who are knowledgeable of the negative effects, they're not talked about. Cultivation analysis helps further explore suicide and self-harm and the impressions that they leave on younger children. And in this slide here, I have just added two charts showing the relationship between children and suicide. So the first chart is going to show young adults, which is ages 15 through 19 in suicide. And as we can see, it is increasing. And the second chart also shows young children ages 10 through 14 in suicide. And as we can see on this one, it is also increasing. So let's talk a little bit about the conclusions. So as we know that media can be influential to the public, it's important to examine the role that suicide plays on its viewers. And the more suicide and self-harm that's implemented in television, it contributes to the normalization and glamorization of self-harm and suicide. And I think a lot of it prevails. We see a lot of how suicide is normalized whenever viewers are not fazed by what they see on television anymore. They're not fazed by the suicides or the deaths that they see in the media. And this is a classic case of television distorting the public's reality or the perception of suicide and self-harm. And I will also say that while there is not a surplus of information on this topic, I think that there can be negative impacts. I mean, the cultivation theory is not saying, oh, suicide on television causes suicide in reality, or violence on television causes violence in reality. It's merely saying that it is a contribution to the suicide rates or to reality. So I think that the study presents a different focus of the cultivation theory. And ultimately, this study And the cultivation theory analyzes the message systems built between television and its viewers to discover the impact of media. And that is my research project. Thank you guys for listening. Bye.